So we have seen the two new terms, that is agriculture. The practice of growing on a large scale is termed as agriculture, and the growing of grains, fruits and vegetables by a farmer in a particular season in a particular place is called a crop. Next, we are going to see the types of crops. So different crops require different kinds of soil, climate and amount of water to grow. So we see that each and every crop requires different types of soil, climate and the amount of water. There are certain crops that require a large amount of water to grow, and certain crops that need minimum water to grow. So different crops require different kinds of soil, climate and amount of water to grow. So we are going to see the names of the crops, the seasons that it is grown in, the kinds of soil it requires and the amount of water needed. So we have the name of the crop, we have the season in which it is grown, the kind of soil that it requires and the amount of water that is needed. So the first crop, if you see, we have wheat, mustard and gram. So talking about the crops, that is wheat, mustard and gram, and they are grown in the winter season and they require the sandy soil. So the type of soil required is your sandy soil, and it requires less amount of water for it to grow. So talking about the first type of crop, that is your wheat, mustard and gram, they grow in the winter season and they require sandy soil for it to grow in, and it requires less amount of water. Moving on to the next, we have the next crop is your jawar, bajra and your maize. So talking about these crops, that is jawar, bajra and rice, they grow well in the summer season. So they grow in the summer season. They again require sandy soil and again they require less amount of water. So talking about the next type of crop is your jawar, bajra and maize. They grow in the summer season. They require sandy soil and less amount of water for it to grow. And finally is the rice. So the rice, it grows in the summer season and it requires wet clay soil. So in our previous session we learned about the types of soils. So the rice requires a wet clayey soil and needs lots of water for it to grow. So these are the types, the names of the crops, the season that it grows in, the kind of soil it requires and the amount of water needed. So the first is your wheat, mustard and gram. They grow in the winter season. They require the sandy soil and less amount of water. The next is your jawar, bajra and wheat. They grow in the summer season. They need sandy soil and again less amount of water. Talking about rice, again they grow in the summer season. They need wet clayey soil and they need lots of water to grow. So crops that are grown in the water are called Rabbi crops. So there are some crops that are grown in the water and are hence termed as Rabbi crops. These crops are grown from November to April and they do not depend on the monsoon rains. For example is your wheat and your legumes. So we see that there are crops that are grown in the water and are called as Rabbi crops, and these crops are grown from the months of November to April and they do not depend on the monsoon rains. For example is your wheat and legumes. So these are the types of crops, and we've seen that different crops require different kinds of soil, climate and the amount of water to grow. And then we seen about the Rabbi crops that are grown in the water, and they are grown from the month of November to April, and they do not depend on the monsoon rains. Examples are your wheat and your legumes.